And welcome to the Christmas meeting of the Williamson County Chapter of the Native Plant Society. I am Beth Erwin, your chapter president. A few announcements before I do the program. We've got field trips coming up. Really excited. Gary Bauer is going to help us with this one right here with a tree identification on January the 1st. All right, something besides football and get out and, and cross our fingers that it's not 95 degrees, or not 30, or icy. So the next one in February is we're going out to Hidden Springs again for another plant survey. That's a lot of fun, and we need everybody because everybody can be observant and go through the bushes. And those of you that are just absolutely terrified of snakes, this is a good time to go because they're kind of sleeping under a rock somewhere. And then we're going to do the visit the Galt site on March the 12th. We don't have a time and meeting location yet. And I'm thinking Sue Wiseman, and Kathy, this is kind of a survey type-ish thing to see, to add to our plant list that has been done historically out there. And then we've got our big trip to Native American Seed in Junction, Texas in April, and in Waco, the group is working on a tour to the Waco wetlands. Upcoming programs, I can't wait for next month. I love to hear Wizzy Brown talk. And she's talking about attracting insects to her yard, and that is one of her favorite topics. So it's going to be good when a good speaker talks about their favorite topics. A lot of you are interested in propagation, and Barbara Wright, who grows our plants for us that we sell at our plant sale, is going to talk about propagating native plants. March, still working on that one. April 14th, we've got Gil Eckrick with Native Plants Are for the Birds. I heard Gil speak this fall, and he was great. You're going to really like him. He's got some fabulous pictures and videos of birds too. This is where you can find us if you want to know more about us. And tonight we're going to give away a book, one to one of you, and then one to one of our Zoomers. And it will be about Texas native plants. And congratulations to Marcia and for Leander and Ingrid from Georgetown from last month. Right, here's the info on future meetings. They're hybrid, and as long as, I guess, a certain number of Zoomers show up, I guess we'll keep Zooming. I don't know how that's going to work, but anyway. All right, let's get going with seasonal natives. This kind of evolved in my head because we needed something for this month because we weren't going to meet. We didn't know what we were going to do, or this or that or the other. And I found out, yes, we did. We are here. We can have food. It's all evolved into this. So I thought, well, this will be a good time of the year to talk about the things that we look at with the season, or the things that come up in the season. So we've all been down the highway to see the Christmas decorations. And if you've been out looking, as I have, for mistletoe, those are some of our seasonal ones. The predominant seasonal plant, native or not, that we deal with are the conifers. We don't have but one conifer for sure, absolutely native to Williamson County, and that's ash juniper. So let's talk a little bit about conifers in general. They are cone bearing. That's what conifer means. They are native to all continents except Antarctica, absent from the harshest deserts and rainforests. 45% of the world's timber production is from conifer species. And I thought it was interesting that the world's tallest, thickest, largest, and oldest living trees are all conifers. And woody species that occur at the highest elevation on the planet are conifers, specifically the juniper genus, same as our ash juniper, same genus. There's a handful of families that are considered conifers. The predominant one is the pine family. And here you see a Virginia pine and a Fraser fir. And then there's another little one over here, family Araucariaceae, Norfolk Island pine, which has invaded the big box stores this time of year. In fact, even though we don't have any native pines in Williamson County, we are invaded by Pinaceae every year at this time. So, and this is your part, and those of you that are here in person, I've got samples of all these plants back there, and I told y'all are going to listen and look, and then you're going to have a test because you're here, right? Right, yeah. Did I switch? Come on. All right. I didn't realize that most of those things in the Christmas tree tent on the parking lot botany, are actually native to the lower 48. So here's Fraser fir. 94% of all Christmas trees sold out of North Carolina are Fraser firs. And they're native to these bright yellow counties. Now, this is a map from Bonap, bonap.net, and they highlight them all yellow because in nature, they are rare. But that doesn't keep there from being something like 56 million of them grown in North Carolina every year. We have plants like that here in Texas, like red yucca, Hesperella, very rare, almost gone from its native counties, but can't walk in HEB without tripping over it, right? So Fraser fir, it was interesting. There's some close-ups of it. Very popular tree. And then here's noble fir or red fir, and it's a West Coast species. There's one of those back there. I had the best time with the guys at the Wolf Ranch Christmas tree place. They just pick it up and smell it and tell you what species it is. And if they hadn't been selling Christmas trees tonight, I would have had them in here for entertainment, and we would have blindfolded them and handed them one and say, tell us what it is. And I guarantee you they would have got every one. So yeah, they're really good at that. Then here's Douglas fir. This one's real soft and feels the most. I grew up 60 years around pine trees, and Douglas fir of all these Christmas trees feels most like a pine tree to me. Another big West Coaster, huge timber industry plant also. And blue spruce or Colorado blue spruce. A little of that back there. And then we get into a different family, Taxaceae or yew. And this is one I haven't been all over Texas, but you don't see this one even in horticulture very much in the deep South. You will see it up on the East Coast, and there is one that's native up in the Appalachians. It's very slow growing. It's a very expensive landscape plant, so builders are not going to put it in our tract housing. So they will put this one there. They used to put this one here. Any of you own a house from the 60s or 70s? And even here, I see them planted right by the front door. There will be a Japanese yew. Podocarpaceae is the family, and I thought, okay, this is the one y'all are going to know. It has those blue berry-looking fruit on it. And you know, does anybody know why they stopped planting it so much? It's poisonous. The fruit's bad press. That was the best way to get rid of an invasive. It's not really bad press. All right, we have conifer fossils that evidence of them has been around, you know, in prehistoric times. And we have one-hit wonders like the Japanese umbrella pine. It is the only species, the only genus in its family that I do not know how to pronounce, but really cool foliage. Isn't that neat? And that's not actually needles. That's, like I said, that's extensions of the stem. So you'd have to go see that in the tropics probably as a planting, or Japan. Ginkgo biloba, everybody knows, is another one-hit wonder, one species, one genus in the family. And then sago palm, which we do have quite a few of those around Williamson County planted. They didn't fare too well in the freeze, but nonetheless, they are cone bearers and they are conifers. And then we have the cypress family, which is where junipers are. Our most common one is ash juniper. And this one over here, red cedar, none of the authorities would give me confirmation that one of these have been found growing naturally in Williamson County. So that doesn't mean it's not in a stack of plant collections in the bottom of the UT tower waiting to be processed to go into the herbarium. It's hard for me to believe that no robin has flown a eastern red cedar berry back over to the eastern edge of Williamson County. Notice the pointed shape too, that Christmas tree shape. A mature eastern red cedar, and I'll point that out again, will always have that shape. Junipers are extremely popular in horticulture, in landscaping, because you can prune a juniper into just about any shape you want, okay? So this one was on Pacific Coast Highway, but you know, Beth saw that. It was like, we gotta have a picture of that. And then look at this wall, this juniper wall right here. Isn't that cool? That's in Beaufort Gardens in Victoria. But I mean, think if you were living in a subdivision with 0 lot lines, how wonderful it would be to have that solid green wall between you and somebody else. And here's the other thing about junipers. And I picked this up from driving up back and forth Leander Road in South Georgetown, going over past Gary Park and out in that direction. They don't care if you prune them with a sidearm mower, okay? You can get out there and trim them, but you can trim them like that. And there are walls of green just like that in fence rows all over the county where they've been, you know, you can see where they've been gouged away, but the junipers are busy putting out new foliage. A blank wall of green, very forgiving. Other ones that you'll find here in the county in the landscape, not native, are Arizona cypress. And it is native to, well, it is native to Brewster County, according to USDA. But Bonap doesn't list it as native. But anyway, we grow, and this is the blue form, and there's a nice pile of foliage back there for Arizona cypress. And then this is fall cypress, and this is in its pretty fall color, which is another one that is not listed as native to Williamson County, but I just feel like it's somewhere over in the eastern part of the county. It's been planted here for years. There's an enormous one by the spring in San Gabriel Park that is beyond this young pyramidal shape. And the balls, the cones fall and they float downstream. And if they end up in muck, like nasty, stinky mud, and then, or the water is off of them, they'll sprout into young cypress trees. But they do have to, they won't sprout as long as they're underwater, but they'll sprout when the water's off. So I just can't believe that somewhere in the Blackland Prairie, half of Williamson County, that there's not some native ball cypress, but it all depends on who's been where and who's been looking for it. Eastern red cedar. This is in Bastrop, Louisiana, right close to the old International Paper Mill. We human beings have a curious, well, those of us with European ancestry, whose ancestors came across Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana to Texas, we want to put an evergreen in our cemetery. And if you were coming from Georgia to across there, you put an eastern red cedar in your cemetery, in your old family cemetery. And it got it to the point where in Louisiana, I could find an old cemetery because if I'm driving along and the fence row suddenly starts having eastern red cedars in it, I'm like, okay, there's an old cemetery here that's going to have graves from the early 1900s. Because, and then when you look at the distribution map for eastern red cedar, every county in the state of Alabama has got a record for eastern red cedar in it. So they all stopped in Alabama and had a baby or two at least. Apparently picked up a eastern red cedar. But you'll find there's a lot of limestone bluffs in Alabama. There's a lot of them in Mississippi too. And you'll find native spots that are limestone cedar glades, they're called in Louisiana too. But by the time they get out to I-35, it's a little dry for them. So out here, every single cemetery in the country I have seen has an Oriental arborvitae in it. And I'm putting this in here. Now, no, that's not a native plant. It is native to a northwestern corner of China. And it is apparently escaped out into Korea and maybe into Florida and so forth. But it's one that you'll see out in the country. It's not one the birds spread, but notice the characteristics of it. It kind of looks like fins on your central air conditioning unit. It's all up straight down. Here's the flat view of the foliage, and here's a side view of the foliage. It is just, it's on planes. So if you see it, you know, you're out visiting an old cemetery, that's what, and if you shear, and it kind of dies down at the bottom and they'll cut the dead limbs off, and here come the babies right here. So, I'm including that because that's something you'll see. You know, when you're out in the wayside, you think, is that some kind of weird ash juniper? Nope. That's an arborvitae. All right, the shape of conifers. It's interesting. When they're young, nearly all of them, except maybe sago palms, will have this pyramidal shape, this traditional Christmas tree shape that forces us to go out and hang Christmas balls on them this time of the year. So it's really hard, like this far right picture, this tiny little one right here is on 183. It's difficult to find a nice, perfect little baby conifer because at that age, the deer, the male deer likes to rub its antlers on it and he'll kind of break the tip. And so then they become kind of fatty a little bit. Now that's an Arizona cypress on the far side, but it gives a good pyramidal shape. So they're gonna have that. And it doesn't, these are all wind-borne pollen. And there's just a ton of DNA out there. And I saw this is something I've observed with cypress trees for years in Louisiana. When they're young, you got short, fat kids and you got tall, skinny kids, okay? And they're all grown from seed. They come up so easily from seed in the nursery business that they're not grafted. They don't really graft very well at all, if at all, and conifers, period. And they're both going to grow up, well, they're at the Carl's Jr. at Will Franch, and but if they were on the banks of the San Gabriel River, they would grow up to be fine. Eventually, they would both grow out of their childhood shapes, just like we do, hopefully. Identifying ash juniper can be pretty easy out in our area because we don't have the eastern red cedars to compete with us for what they might be. There's going to be male plants and female plants. The females should have fruit, and by the way, they don't start fruiting or making pollen until they are 10 to 20 years old. So that dates your tree right there. You know, they're kind of slow to mature. You might see an Arizona cypress. It's going to have the cones, which don't look anything like this. That's it over there with the points on it. But Arizona cypress is Hespercyparis. It is not a juniper genus. It has male and female flowers on the same limbs. In the examples that I have for you in the back, you'll see the female, the cones are back up here, and the pollen is out there on the end.
So I think I recall like up in Jasper on a hike, and they have junipers that have those blue things and they make gin out, right?
Right.
But then stuff down here is it?
You know, I didn't do, this is parking lot and roadside. It's not brewery talk, botany, distillery, but that's a good potential program. If one of y'all would like to run that down, I think that would probably attract a lot of attention. We'd have some, here's alligator juniper that has in West Texas that they use to flavor the gin. $50 for a bottle of gin. This is free information. So somebody gives you a bottle of juniper gin, you know, oh, you'd like me $50? Okay. No idea. You're going to end up doing that program. And bring some examples for us to smell and bring some gin. Okay, let's go with identifying ash juniper. A mature ash juniper is going to have a rounded top. They are big old lollipops. An eastern red cedar, and this one is at Washington on the Brazos, is going to have a pointed top. It's just, it never loses that Christmas tree shape. Another interesting thing about conifers in general is that they have different type foliage at different ages. So here is young and old variations. Examples are back there on the table labeled. This is young juniper foliage, or fairly young. It's soft, it's putting out those feathers, and when you drive down the highway and you're doing roadside botany, you can see that. And you'll see some trees, once you start looking at them, some of them have a lot of shoots. Well, that's a really young tree. And then some of them are beginning to have less, you know. And then some of them will be completely gray-haired. like this. They just quit doing that. And then you've got an old juniper, or if you see that, you may have mixed aged juniper groups. Now, and I really tried to find the answer to this, how long does an ash juniper live? Okay. And all I could find out was that a fence post will last 50 years. The juniper genus is known to live from 350 to 700 years old. And you want to see a big honking juniper, is Google the national record for ash juniper, and it's in Comal County, Texas. And that is a whopper. I mean, there's a lady standing under this massive trunk. So no idea how old it is. They do not tolerate fire at all. So that can help you age your land possibly. And we did have quite a bit of fire before European settlement. So, but you got a juniper that's just doing that, you know, that's a very, very old juniper. And you'll be able to tell it'll be gnarly and the trunk will be twisted and the limbs will be twisted. But that's and I did get you a picture of a young one and an old one there together. It is not okay. Looking at the whole tree, an old juniper will have just a tighter foliage look to it. At a distance, they kind of look like pine trees to me, with our shortleaf pines, but it's clustered, no stringiness. Any questions in here about junipers? Because I'm fixing to leave junipers. You've heard. No, I'm not arguing about whether they're good or bad, because they are good and they're bad. Okay. They're here. That's right. All right, we'll talk about mistletoe a little bit. That's another seasonal native. Had fun looking for that too. Just about found out that I could identify the trees by whether or not they had mistletoe in them. So if it had mistletoe in it, it's probably a cedar elm. You know, it might be a hackberry, but I was in uplands. So nearly every cedar elm had some mistletoe in it. Our mistletoe is Phorodendron tomentosum, which when I took botany, that's not what we consider tomentose. I mean, Duck Dynasty was tomentose. So, but it's pretty hairy and I wasn't in charge of naming it. So there you go. You have male plants and female plants, and females of course have the fruit. You've got some back there bagged up. If you eat the fruit, you're supposed to get cramps and diarrhea. So I bagged it up in case somebody just said, oh, you have a little barrier between that. And then I did close-ups. The male flowers, they'll be in a cluster like that. And there's some nice selections back there of the male stems with the little clumps where the pollen. And then the female is just a circlet here where the berries are going to be. And you can see all the little hairs on there when you're zoomed up close. I did show you had that one with the picture with it sprouting out of the trunk that'll be at the end. They, for the most part, mistletoe does not harm the tree unless the tree's under a lot of stress. And around here, you can see a tree or two under a lot of stress over time. There is a juniper mistletoe, I believe it's in West Texas. Funky looking stuff. Looks kind of like juniper. So, all right. Oh, and mistletoe is spread by birds, mostly. Hollies, Ilex decidua or possum haw is, you know, a favorite for decorating because it'll last out of water for a week or two or three. And it lasts in water a long time. It's nice when it gets cold enough to make the leaves drop before you get ready to decorate with it. And it's nice when the cedar waxwings come after Christmas and clean it all off and splatter it all over the windshield of your car, so, or your patio or porch or wherever. So deciduous holly or possum haw is generally found in lowlands. There's quite a bit of it out at Berry Springs. Of course, only the females have fruit. The key characteristic to it, when it's not flowering, not fruiting, you can't see fruit on it. It's got this, what's called a spatulate-shaped leaf, long, skinny, kind of tapered, and they are not opposite. They are alternate, and it's just kind of what it is when you can't figure out else what it is. It's not thick and hard like an evergreen leaf, so it's very nondescript when it's not in fruit. The fruit are born right there Very little peduncle there. They're sitting right there, almost sessile on the stem. There are lots of varieties of it, most of them from the east. There's weeping ones, there's fat berried ones. When I was in Louisiana, someone gave me a gold fruited one. And the curious thing about it was, they also gave me a weeping red one, and I had them in the same bed. These are my hybrid deciduous holly examples. These guys would clean off the weeping red one year after year after year. At no time in 25 years did a bird ever eat a young deciduous holly. There are some gold ones out here. I've seen them in fence rows. Not to be, I mean, some of these will be more orange than red, and some of them fade to a gold, but these are, born gold. So, I mean, I'm for red, any color as long as it's red. So, but anyway, it was interesting. The other holly I have is Yopon holly, and Nancy Pumphrey brought us a sample from her weeping. Again, holly, only the females will have fruit. The Yopon has a almost iridescent or almost translucence to the fruit, always, where the deciduous holly does not. When you get back there, you can see that is a solid mass, just almost like a red patent leather over that fruit. And then the Yopon will be almost clear. If you hold it up to light, you can actually see light coming through it. It has one of the best examples of, here's the botanical term for you, Gary Bowers, a crenate leaf right there. That's scallops like that. It's crenate. Yopon holly, especially the males, are another one that can be pruned into almost any shape. Here's a kind of nondescript large bushy male in San Gabriel Park. And then these are right outside the door here at the library. These are the Will Fleming varieties. They were found in Alabama by Tom Dodd. And Will Fleming is a Texan. He named him after Will because Will's tall and skinny. So these are another one that I see that I just itch to get my loppers out when I see them. They are males, and good Lord, if they were females, the fruit would just have them, all over the place. But they do need to be kept trimmed. Please, no taller than the eaves of your house. If you've got to have them, they don't need to be taller than the eaves of your house. And you're going to have to get some fishing line or something in there, some string, and bind them up so they'll stay tied in their little fascicate shape. So that's your horticulture landscaping tip for hollies. All right, and that is all I have. There's the mistletoe coming out of the cedar elm bark. People tell you it has to be in the crotch of a tree or a limb. No, it doesn't. It comes straight out. All right, any questions? An enormous number of chats.
There's one interesting comment from Ann Yakumovics. She says that you can tell the age of ash junipers by a white spots on the trunk and branches.
That's true.
And then when they get older, the white spots disappear.
At what numbers? Does she know that? I'm looking for numbers, hard data. Nobody is studying, as far as I can tell. I went through an awful lot of data. I did find out that if you allow goats to graze your ash juniper, it stunts their growth.
Beth.
It stunts the tree. Slows the tree's growth down if you allow your goats to graze your ash junipers.
Elizabeth McGreevy, in her book on mountain cedars, the junipers, she actually has a chart.
Limb them up. Well, yeah, that's how that woman right over there still takes care of her pasture. So. Sago palms are deadly to guts. So are Japanese yews, I would imagine. All right, any other questions? Okay, everybody out there in Zoom world, y'all have a Merry Christmas. Wish you were here. Wish you were here. That's right.